Confidence is critical to your success, but how do you maintain confidence without coming across as arrogant? Let's dive in. Welcome to Success Sundays with Harrison. I'm your host, Harrison Wilder. I'm a corporate strategist and entrepreneur with an executive MBA from the George Washington University. I've managed 2 multi-million-dollar companies, and I advise top-level executives from a variety of industries. In this show, you'll find practical insights that will help you succeed as a leader in today's business environment. If you're serious about developing your skills as an executive, this is the place for you. Enjoy today's episode. In high school, I was not lacking in confidence. In fact, in high school, it seemed like everything that I did, everything I put my hands to just worked. Like everything worked, everything I wanted to do, any vision I could come up with, like it just worked. And as a result, like my confidence was beaming. I think it had been that way really since like the 7th grade. Just like every desire I had, everything I applied myself towards, everything I wanted to do, it worked out really well. But as I started getting later into high school, my junior year, my senior year, man, I started getting feedback from people I cared about, from my friends, from my family, that not only was I confident, but man, I was arrogant. And they didn't enjoy being around me anymore. They didn't like the way I made them feel when they were in my presence. And man, that was so bothersome to me. So especially after I was saved and I came to know the Lord and I wanted to be a good Christian, really for the next 20 years of ministry, I started to get all of that arrogance beat out of me, right? Man, I'm not amazing. I'm not all that great. I've got things I need to work on. Really started becoming more reflective and doing the work that we all need to do, on the internal things. And you know what? One day I woke up and I realized that I had lost my confidence. I was no longer arrogant, but it was worse. I wasn't confident and I was questioning everything that I tried to do, like questioning my own abilities, questioning whether I could hear from God, questioning my desires, all of these things. My confidence was shattered. Of course, the arrogance was gone. And maybe you felt this way. Maybe you as well have been maybe you've gone through a similar experience. Maybe you had confidence and you've lost it. Maybe you've never really felt that confident. Maybe confidence is something that has been, something that has been not acceptable in your family, not acceptable in the culture that you grew up in. And so you never really developed a strong sense of confidence, but you know that you're not supposed to be arrogant. And so you may be wondering, how can I become confident without being arrogant? Or for some of you, how can I maintain this confidence, but I don't want to come across to people as arrogant. I don't want to hurt people. How can I be confident without making other people feel bad? How can I be confident without belittling other people? And I found that the key to all of this is in this little passage of scripture that's in Romans 12. And I'm going to read all of it to you in just a second. It's about 8 verses, but this one verse you'll be familiar with. And it says that I say to everyone among you that you ought not to think more highly of himself, right? Than he ought to, but to think so as to have sound judgment, as God has allotted to each a measure of faith, right? So Paul here in Romans is encouraging those of us who are leaders, those of us who are pursuing God's plan for our life, those of us who have a vision, who are chasing things, that we ought not to think more highly of ourselves than we ought to. And sometimes you read the scripture and you're thinking so I should think less of myself, right? I shouldn't be so highly esteemed in my own mind. But I want to tackle that because I don't think that's actually what he's saying here. And as we look at the context, I think we're going to see a lot of great stuff to help us in understanding how to develop our confidence, but how to do it in a way that we don't at the same time become arrogant. So I'm going to back up here. Romans 12, verse 1, and I'm going to read this to you, and we'll kind of break this down a little bit by a little bit. Look, and I know sometimes I use Bible verses, I use Bible stories inside of my podcast, and that's just me being me. This is how I've come to understand the world, is through these scriptures. You don't have to believe the Bible the way that I believe it. That's totally, you've got to make your own choices about beliefs. But if you allow me to be me, I can help you the most by using illustrations and examples and teaching that come out of the scripture, because for me, this has been like a foundation of what I built my whole life on. So I can't really separate success from these scriptures and these things. So Romans chapter 12 says, it starts in verse 1, "Therefore I urge you, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies a living and holy sacrifice, acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship." And so let's just start right there, because when we want to talk about confidence and having confidence, the first thing that we need to do is to present our bodies, right, to God's plan for our life. Right? We like as an acceptable sacrifice. So one of the ways that you can have great confidence in your life but not be arrogant is to surrender yourself and understand that like everything that you're doing in your life is God's plan for your life. When you surrendered your will to God, when you start to look about, hey, what was I created for? What am I supposed to do with this life that I've been given? Who am I supposed to serve? Who am I supposed to help? What am I supposed to become? What are the accomplishments? What are these desires that God has put inside of me? When you surrender yourself over to those things, you recognize that like everything that you do is no longer just because you want to do it. It's because you were designed that way. It's because the Creator wants you to do it. The Creator wants you to become that. So you can see how like there's a sense of like, wow, I am special. Like, wow, like I have been created with a purpose in mind, and I have been given special gifts to help me pursue this plan, this divinely orchestrated thing for my life. And when you approach life from that perspective, it gives you a great sense of confidence, because now you're empowered to just be you. You can be you the way God designed you, and also you don't have to be arrogant about it, because it's just, it's not like you chose it. It's not like you self-determined, who you were going to become. You were created to be this, right? So everything's right in alignment in that way. Like, I'm just being me, and I can be confident as me, and that's not an arrogant thing. So surrendering yourself, presenting your bodies as a sacrifice acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship. So like, and isn't that so cool to think that like, hey, I know we go to church and we sing songs and we call that worship. We call serving worship when we serve in the church or we go out and do outreach. But, just presenting your life to God and saying, God, I want to do what you've called me to do. I want to become who you've created me to become. That is your reasonable response to God. That's your acceptable act of worship. That's what true worship is you just becoming the person that God has created you to be. And then it says this, it says, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may prove what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect, right? So again, we are proving what the will of God is for our life. Like, our life now becomes all about stepping into God's perfect plan, God's perfect will, like this divinely orchestrated plan for your life. Stepping into it is proving to the world that this is the will of God, right? And this is how we become good and acceptable and perfect. Other great words for confident, right? Like, we know that like what we're doing is acceptable. We know that it's good, and we even know that like it's going to be perfect. Like, that God's leading us towards a perfect plan for our life. Can you see how just and we're not focusing so much on this, because I want to get into like how this applies inside of the community, inside of people in your world. But the first part is establishing kind of this vertical channel between you and God, you and your Creator, right? That you've been sent here for a purpose, and stepping into that is not arrogant. Stepping into that is actually your assignment in life. This is what you're called here to do. This is what you've been put here to do. So there's a lot of like transforming that needs to happen in our mind and getting our mindsets in alignment, so that we can go out and do what it is he's called us to do. But then we get into this verse. It says, so from that perspective, for through the grace given to me, I say to everyone among you not to think more highly of himself than he ought to think, but to think so as to have sound judgment, as God has allotted to each a measure of faith. All right. So look, I understand like when you're reading this the first time, it's like God saying, so Paul's saying like not to think highly of myself, but that's not what he's saying. He's saying, don't think too highly of yourself. And the way that you think too highly of yourself is by not understanding that everybody has been given a measure of faith, right? Everybody has been given the same things that you've been given. Everybody else has been given a purpose, right? Everybody else has been given something that they're supposed to become. Everybody else has been given desires by God. And all of those things are important. Everybody else is able to live confidently in pursuit of God's plan for their life as well. And the way that we think more highly of ourselves is by refusing to recognize that other people are just as important as us, right? This is where true arrogance comes in, and what I probably struggled with in high school is not realizing that just as much as I am important and I have a calling and I have a purpose, so does everybody else. And so when I keep things in proper perspective, I can both be confident, but I can also understand that other people are important as well, and that they have their own role to play, and that their role is equally as inspired by God and equally as important towards this great kingdom that God is building with us together. Right? So let's not think too highly of ourselves. In other words, let's not think that we are the only ones that are important. Let's recognize that everybody else is important as well. Right? God has allotted to each a measure of faith. And this is how I know that this is what he's saying, because he goes on to say, just as we have many members in one body, and all the members do not have the same function, so we who are many are one body in Christ and individually members of one another. Right? Then he says this, since we have gifts that differ according to the grace given to one of us. So look, other people's gifts are different than yours. It doesn't make them any less valuable, but they're different. They're different than your gifts, right? They've been called to do something different. They've been giving talents. They contribute in a different way, right? But each one is important, and each one is part of the body, and they can't, and our body as collective, like we can't function without each other. We need each other. And since that's true, since we have gifts that differ according to the grace given to us, it says this, each of us is to exercise them accordingly. Right? Say that word out loud. Exercise. Exercise. One way to grow your confidence without being arrogant is to understand that you've got gifts and they need to be developed. They need to be exercised, right? And then it says if you've got the gift of prophecy, then according to the proportion of his faith. If service and his serving, or he who teaches and his teaching, he who exhorts in his exhortation, he who gives with liberality, he who leads. Since this is a leadership success podcast, it says he who leads with diligence, right? So look, the one way to become confident and to maintain your confidence is to exercise your leadership, is to step out there, to expose yourself to new opportunities to lead, and to be diligent with the opportunities that are in front of you. So whatever your gift is, whatever you've been given to do, the Bible says, do it with all of your might. And that's one way that we develop confidence without having arrogance, right? Because we recognize that, hey, I've got skills I need to develop. I need to put to practice these things. And I have a responsibility before God as my act of worship to do that. Look, I hope that's helpful for you for Romans 12. To develop a sense of confidence while losing all of the arrogance. Look, I think that if you pay attention to Romans, especially that first verse there in chapter 12, you begin to understand that you can know who you are. You can understand who God has created you to be, and you can be very confident about that, but you can do it in such a way that you really don't have anything to have to prove to anybody else, right? You're not comparing yourself to other people. Each person has been created with their own unique assignment, with their own unique gifts. Maybe we are running a race, but we're not running against each other, right? We're not comparing. We're not looking to see who's ahead of me or who's behind me. No, it's about are you going to fulfill God's purpose for your life? That's the race that you're running. You're running your own race, and you don't have to worry about where other people are. You don't have to prove anything to them. And just understanding that will allow you to not have to put other people down, to not have to think that to convince yourself that you're more important than other people. You don't need that. They can run their race and you can run theirs. And really that's the last thing that I want to cover today in this episode is just understanding that you have the opportunity and you should give yourself the opportunity to be the hero of your own story. One of the things I've realized in the last few years is that everybody wants to be the hero, right? When we're looking back over the course of our life, when we're looking back like anything that we've been a part of that's been significant or challenging, we always put ourselves in the position of the hero. Like, man, if we hadn't have done that, then like this would have happened, or if we hadn't have said this, and this would have fallen apart. We're the hero. We're the person who grew from it. We're the person who contributed to it, and that's so great. Like, you're actually supposed to be the hero of your own story. God wired you that way. And what's cool about it is that you can be the hero of your own story while still letting everybody else be the hero of their story. Right? One of the things I think is a lot of fun in our business. My wife and I, we have a business together. And look, when my wife shares the story of how our business started and a lot of our initial success, man, she is the hero of that story. I mean, she saved our family from being in a small apartment, small 2-bedroom apartment. We didn't have any grass. We were going nowhere, and she went to a conference and she got exposed to this world of entrepreneurship that we lived in. She rescued our whole family from that situation. And you know what? She's the hero of her story, and I love to hear her tell that story because she's the hero. You know what? But when I tell the story, it's different. When I tell the story, I'm the husband that let all this happen, right? I'm the husband that decided to step out of whatever gender roles that there are, and to let my wife step out and become who she wants to be, and take a back seat for a season, or I'm the guy who held down the family and spent time with the kids, and I'm the hero of the story in my version of the story. And that's one of the things that's great that makes our marriage work, is like we can both be the heroes of our own story. I don't have to constantly remind her that if it wasn't for me, we wouldn't be here. She doesn't have to constantly remind me that if it wasn't for her, that we wouldn't be here. Right? We can both be the heroes of our own story. And I want to encourage you, like, you can have that same approach with other people. Look, people are so needy for this right now. And I say needy, I know that can sound like a negative word, and sometimes it is. Like sometimes people are inappropriately needy for this. But it's only because nobody's taken the time recently to remind them that their contribution is significant. And I'm feeling this right now. For the people out there who nobody's told you in a long time that your role is important, that your gift is important, that what you do for your organization, for your family, is important. Nobody's reminded you recently that you play a significant part, and that your gifts are important, and your calling is important, and what you're supposed to contribute to the world is important. And so, in fact, let's let this just be the success challenge of this week, is that you could find someone who desperately wants to be the hero and affirm to them their hero status. Is there somebody in your organization that you could just say, hey, if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have gotten this project done. Thank you for your contribution. Well done. You're a critical member of this team. If it wasn't for your unique gifts, we wouldn't be where we are today. If it wasn't for your what God how God has created you, and the unique talents that He's given you, we wouldn't be able to move forward the way that we're about to move forward. Let somebody else be the hero of their own story and just affirm that. And look, if you can do that, if you can create that kind of environment, if you can go out and encourage people in that kind of way and just give them permission to be the hero of their own story, while giving yourself permission to be the hero of your own story. Look, you're going to be able to build your confidence, to grow, to maintain that great sense of security and confidence in yourself without coming across as arrogant and without belittling the people around you. So, hey, listen, if there's any questions you have, anything that I could do for you, help you out with, drop it down in the comments. My team's looking through there, and they'll tee up ideas for future episodes based on what you share down in the comments. So we'd love to hear from you. But until then, have a great week, and we'll see you in the next episode. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Great businesses and great leaders are built using effective communication. For more, go to speakingschool.com, grab my Elite Business Success Toolkit for free just for trying out our Speaking School membership. That's speakingschool.com. See you next time.